Dear friends, today we are going to tell you an interesting story that will leave your eyes wide open. This is the story of a sultan who arranged the marriage of his prince to a monkey. On the wedding night, this monkey did something that astonished and confused the sultan. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There was a great sultan living in a village. He had 3 sons, Asher, Ahmar, and the youngest, Gulfam. These 3 had grown up, and one day the sultan called them all in front of him. He looked very serious. "My sons, now that you are all grown up, it is time for your marriage. I want you to find a good queen who can understand you and fill your life with happiness. But before marriage, I will test all of you." Upon hearing this, Asher and Ahmar asked, "But where will we find our wives?" The sultan smiled and answered, "I will give each of you a piece of wood, which you will throw into the royal lake. Go there and search for your queen." The sultan gave each of them a piece of wood. Asher said, "I will search for my wife in Delhi." Ahmar said, "I will go towards the snowy mountains." And Gulfam said, "I will go to the forest." Gulfam separated from his brothers and headed towards the forest. Among the trees, there was a strange silence in the air. As he moved forward, he felt that something special awaited him. After walking for a while, he reached a small hut hidden under a tree. He could hear laughter coming from inside. When he peeked inside, he saw a monkey sitting there, who not only spoke to him, but also explained things to him in a kind manner. Gulfam, astonished, said, "You are a monkey, and I am a human. How can I marry you?" The monkey smiled and replied, "You are human, but do you lack love in your heart? I can understand your heart, and I will make you truly happy." Gulfam thought deeply and said, "But you are not human. How can I marry you?" The monkey gently replied, "I know you think there's a difference between humans and animals, but the truth of the heart is different. Love and truth have no color, shape, or gender." Gulfam thought for a while, and then decided, "If this is my fate, I will marry you." Gulfam returned to his brothers, who mocked him. Asher said, "You must have found some wild animal in the forest, and you decided to marry it." Ahmar laughed and said, "We found beautiful girls among humans, and you chose a monkey as your companion?" But Gulfam ignored their words and said, "My wife is delicate, sings sweet songs, and has a pure heart." The sultan then said to his sons, "Now, whatever choice you have made, that is your fate, and no one can deny your fate." Hearing this, Asher and Ahmar went silent, but they couldn't understand why Gulfam made such a choice. The sultan said, "Everyone's fate is different, and what you have chosen is what is closest to your heart." The next day, the sultan gathered his sons again and said, "Now your test begins. You must tell me everything about your wives, and show me that your choice was truly the right one." Asher and Ahmar laughed again and said, "So, did you find a hanging princess in the forest?" Upon hearing this, Gulfam smiled and stayed silent. A few days later, Sultan Asher said, "I want to see if you really found good wives. My 3 daughters-in-law will bake bread for me, so that I can see how good they are." Asher and Ahmar were completely sure that their wives would make the best bread. However, Gulfam was worried if his monkey could even make bread. He became anxious, but still gathered the courage to go to his monkey wife. When the monkey saw Gulfam, she became happy and started dancing and singing. Gulfam said, "My father wants you to make bread for me so he can see what you're like, But you're a monkey. How can you make bread?" Upon hearing this, the monkey smiled, took out a small bell, and rang it. As soon as the bell rang, several monkeys from the jungle came into the hut. They immediately brought wheat grains, ground them, and started preparing flour. The monkey then began to make the bread, and it was not just any bread. It was soft and white. Its fragrance was so enchanting, it seemed as if it were being prepared in a palace. Golfam just watched in awe as she made the bread. The next day, the three brothers arrived at Sultan Asher's place with their breads. First, Asher presented his wife's bread, which was simple and ordinary. The Sultan said, "Your wife has made a good bread, but it is quite plain." Then Amar presented his wife's bread, which had a more rural, Swati flavor. The Sultan said, "Your wife has done well too, but this bread is too simple." Finally, Golfam presented his wife's bread to the Sultan. The Sultan looked at the bread and said, "This is such a soft and white bread. It seems your wife is very special." Golfam smiled and said, "Yes, father." She rang the bell, and at her command, all the monkeys prepared the wheat flour. Then she quickly made these best breads. The Sultan was very pleased with Gulfam's wife's abilities. Asher said, "Now, I want to test all three of your wives again. I want to see if your wives can sew as well. Bring me a sample of the clothes made by your wives." Asher and Amar were happy because their wives were skilled in sewing, but Gulfam felt that this would be a tough test for him, as his wife was a monkey. However, Gulfam gathered courage and decided to try his fate. Gulfam went to his monkey wife. The monkey became happy again and started dancing. Gulfam smiled and said, "My father wants to test you again. I want to see the clothes you've sewn." The monkey laughed and said, "You should trust me." After that, she rang her bell again. Hearing the sound of the bell, the monkeys entered the hut, and with their help, the monkey began preparing threads. Soon, the monkeys brought the finest silk threads, and the monkey used them to create a beautiful, finely crafted piece of cloth. The fabric was so beautiful and delicate that it made one's heart happy just by looking at it. The monkey lovingly handed the cloth to Gulfam and said, "Here is your cloth, and remember, I am always with you." Gulfam took the cloth and went to Sultan Asher. The Sultan looked at the cloth and said, "This is such a beautiful and splendid piece of fabric. Your wife is truly capable." Gulfam was pleased. Everything his monkey wife had done was full of effort and love. Sultan Asher then said to Gulfam one day, "Now I will ask you another question." Gulfam replied, "Yes, father, ask anything, I will answer." Sultan Asher smiled and asked, "I want to know how you treat your wife. The bread and the clothes were all made by that monkey, but how well have you treated her?" Gulfam paused for a moment and then said, "My father, you are right. The bread and the clothes were made by her, but I have always treated her with respect. She is not just my wife. She is my companion in the jungle." Sultan Asher, amazed, said, "Your words show that you have truly made her a part of your life. With sincere love." Gulfam replied, "Yes, father. I have never considered her inferior. She is part of my life, and I know that her love is the reason for our success." Sultan Asher listened to all of this and said, "You have truly taught me a lot. I never thought that a monkey could show truer love than humans. Whatever your wife did, it wasn't just hard work, but it was done with all her heart." He said, "This cloth is for your father. He will like it." The next day, all three brothers arrived at Sultan Asher's place with their sewing samples. Asher and Amar presented their cloth samples, and the Sultan said, "Both your wives have done a great job. I am pleased that they are skilled." But when Gulfam took out a coconut shell from his pocket and placed the cloth inside it, both his brothers started laughing. "Did your wife place the cloth in a coconut?" Asher laughed, and Amar couldn't stop laughing either. But Sultan Asher looked seriously at Gulfam and opened the coconut shell. As soon as the Sultan took the cloth out, everyone's eyes widened in astonishment. The cloth was so delicate, soft, and beautiful that its shine dazzled everyone. It was crafted with such finesse and precision that the clothes of Asher and Amar seemed ordinary in comparison. Sultan examined the cloth carefully and smiled, saying, "This is unparalleled. I have never seen such soft and refined cloth. Truly, your wife has accomplished something amazing." Asher and Ahmar felt a sense of defeat. They stood silently, and the Sultan continued, "Gulfam, you and your wife have won this challenge through your hard work and skill. I am very happy to see this." Gulfam thought to himself, "Even if people consider my wife just a simple monkey, her goodness, love, and affection have proved everyone wrong." Now, Sultan Asher said, "Now I want to meet all of your wives. I want to see what kind of women they are." Asher and Amar were delighted because they were eager to present their beautiful and royal wives to the Sultan. But Gulfam was anxious. He wondered if his wife, being a monkey, would cause ridicule when she arrived at the palace. However, Gulfam pushed aside his concerns and decided that he would stand by his wife. When they reached the hut, the monkey started dancing with joy as soon as she saw Gulfam. Gulfam smiled and said, "My father wants to meet you." A sparkle appeared in the monkey's eyes. She immediately rang her bell, and 4 monkeys, who had been carrying her throne, began lifting it. Together, they started heading towards the palace. Along the way, Gulfam thought to himself, "No matter what happens, I have stayed loyal to her, and she truly deserves all my happiness." But as they got closer to the palace, suddenly a strong wind blew, and a downpour began. The rain was so heavy that both the monkeys and the monkey wife were swept away. Gulfam panicked and shouted, "My delicate queen!" He looked around, but the monkey was nowhere to be found. Fear and anxiety filled Gulfam's eyes, and he began to cry. Tears flowed from his eyes as he walked heavily toward the palace. Near the palace, Gulfam saw a beautiful, ornate, decorated window. Inside, a very beautiful woman sat. The woman softly called out, "Gulfam, won't you come to the palace with me?" Gulfam looked at her, and she was so beautiful that he couldn't take his eyes off her. She was as white as snow, with red lips and large eyes that added to her beauty. She was dressed in velvet and wore precious jewelry in her hair. Gulfam looked at her with astonished eyes and asked, "Who are you?" The woman smiled and replied, "Gulfam, I am the same delicate monkey you once considered your own." Gulfam's heart began to race. With love and certainty, he said, "You, how are you?" The woman spoke softly, "I was once a princess. One day, I went to the jungle to hunt with my minister. There, I saw a small rabbit and accidentally killed it. I didn't know that this rabbit would become a part of my destiny. After its death, I prayed to find the purpose of my life, and it was then that I discovered this secret, that something else was meant for me in my fate. After that day, I came to know the greatest truth of the world in the form of a monkey, and this became my destiny." Gulfam's eyes sparkled, and he said, "You've proven that truth and love have no shape or obstacle. You are simply an example that those who win with their hearts can change the world." The woman smiled and said, "Now, a new chapter will begin in your life, where love, loyalty, and courage will always lead you to success." Her words carried such truth that Gulfam became convinced that his journey was now heading in a new direction, where he could truly recognize his wife and his destiny. The rabbit had been the son of an elderly beggar. Shortly after, the elderly beggar arrived and angrily spoke, "You have taken my son's life. Now you will face the consequences." The queen begged for forgiveness, but the beggar said, "You will not be freed from this curse until someone truly loves you from the heart." The queen replied, "Since then, I have lived as a monkey in the jungle. Your love and kindness have freed me from this curse." Tears welled up in Gulfam's eyes as he said, "O Allah, it was your will that we met, and your will was for us to be together." After that, both of them happily headed toward the palace. When they reached the palace, everyone was astonished to see them. The queen was so beautiful that no one could stop praising her. Her two elder brothers stood silent, ashamed of their laughter. The sultan, seeing the queen, happily said, "Gulfam, your wife is truly rare. You have passed this test with true love and patience." After that, a grand wedding celebration took place in the palace for all three brothers. The queen filled the palace with joy and won the heart of her father-in-law. The three brothers and their wives created an atmosphere of new hope and love in the palace, especially Gulfam's wife, who had now become a beautiful queen, continued to captivate everyone with her wisdom and love. She decorated every corner of the palace and made everyone fall in love with her. The joy of the wedding spread throughout the palace. Everywhere there were colorful scents and lights. But in one room, where Gulfam and his queen were alone, a deep silence prevailed. Gulfam sat close to his queen, a strange sense of peace on his face. "Did you ever think we would reach this place?" Gulfam asked his queen. She smiled and looked at him. "Always. But your love and truth convinced me that we would surely succeed." Her voice had a soft, loving resonance. Gulfam, gazing into her eyes, said, "I didn't know you had so much strength inside you. You taught me with every step, and today I am here with you. I've come to consider you my world." The queen gently took his hand. "It was your true love that gave me life again. Remember, Gulfam, there is no barrier in love. When the heart is true, even the greatest force in the world fails." A few days later, there was a new fragrance in the palace. Gulfam and the queen's relationship had now become more than just love. It had intertwined their destinies. The sultan sat with his son and daughter-in-law, talking for hours, and their happiness spread throughout the palace. "I've always taught you that despite life's hardships, if the heart is pure, you can overcome any difficulty." The sultan said to Gulfam, who looked at his father with grateful eyes and replied, "Father, with your prayers and teachings, we have reached this point today. True love is the power that makes a person successful." After that day, everything in the palace began to change. Gulfam and his queen not only gave a new direction to the palace, but to the entire kingdom. Their love story became famous throughout the region. This story embedded in every heart the belief that true love and goodness can overcome any obstacle. Sultan Ashar, who was now pleased with the success of his children and daughters-in-law, one day said to his sons, "Look, love and loyalty give the greatest rewards. Your success is not only the result of your hard work, but also the love and truth in your hearts, which will make you successful." Then, a grand celebration was held in the palace. The three brothers and their wives shared happiness together. Golfam and his queen had set a new example for everyone, showing that love and hard work have no alternative. Finally, when night arrived and the palace lights dimmed, Golfam and his queen sat together, thinking of their bitter past and their present happiness. Both knew that their love was a new beginning. Their story was now being told throughout the kingdom, and everyone was learning a new lesson about truth, love, and loyalty. We have made our own path, and now we will always walk this path together, Golfam said to his queen. "Always, no matter what," the queen replied with a smile. And so, this beautiful story came to an end, proving that true love and loyalty always show the way to a successful and happy life.